Erin. Our final presenter this afternoon is Dana Hudson. Dana is the Northeast Regional Lead for the National Farm to School Network, working with Vermont Feed at Shelburne Farms. She works with 7 states of New York and New England on network building, information and resource sharing, training and technical assistance, policy and research, media and marketing of farm to school, organizing a regional steering committee that oversees a host of activities that work to support and promote the health and education and agricultural impacts of farm to school. Dana is on the advisory board of the National Farm to School Network and serves on a number of national committees that work with the USDA and other partners. She's also on the leadership team of the FINE Collaborative, which is the Farm to Institution New England, and she's a master's in environmental studies, where she is focused on agricultural education and nonprofit administration. She grew up on a farm in Maryland and has dedicated her career to improving the livelihood status and lifestyle of farm families like her own. She's got 2 young children, a husband, a dog, 2 cats, 8 chickens, and a weedy garden at home where she wants to be when not when work meetings. So thank you, Dana, for joining us. Please join me in welcoming Dana to UVM.
Good afternoon, everybody. Again, my name is Dana Hudson, and I'm really honored to be here today with my fellow panelists. I don't have a research paper to present. I'm here to share my perspective as a practitioner in the field. When I was invited today, I struggled with what to talk about with only 15 minutes. And because those that know me know I can talk a lot longer than that. And as my fellow panelists have shared, the behavior and cultural considerations are very complex and are a very challenging topic. And as we are talking both about individual behaviors and the shifting of cultural norms. Since most of my work is in farm to school, I thought I'd focus my time on the behavioral and cultural changes that I've seen in farm to school work, and to particularly what I've seen happen in the past 10 years. But what aspects of farm to school work should I share? So I was thinking, all right, so maybe I should talk about how farm to school has changed some cultural acceptance of farm to school, and particularly an example of how state and federal legislation has passed. For when Vermont passed its farm to school legislation in 2005, we were the 4th state in the nation to pass legislation, and we were the first state that had a program that was based on incentive-based, grant-based program. And now, there are 46 states that have either passed or proposed farm to school legislation, and just in 2002 and 2003 legislative timeframe, there were 20 bills passed and 17 introduced, just on farm to school. So wow, that seems to me like a fairly decent measure of some cultural acceptance of farm to school. Oh, and as Erin was speaking, there's federal legislation that has created the cross-departmental farm to school program within the USDA that now has 13 employees. That's pretty exciting. But then I was thinking, maybe instead of talking about legislation, I could talk more about the interest and growth in the job market in this field. In 2005, I attended the Farm to Cafeteria Conference in Kenyon, Ohio. We had 180 people, and we had a job board on the easel at the registration table, and there were maybe 6 jobs posted up on the board. Just this past spring, at the Farm to Cafeteria Conference in Austin, Texas, we'd planned for 1,000 people, but we had to close registration at close to 1,200 people that wanted to attend. And we also, there were job posting listservs, there were job-related forums happening, and now we see 10 to 20 postings a day in this work on some of those job boards. And that's a pretty good measure, in my opinion, for how things have changed in the past 10 years. But then I was also thinking, maybe it's worth talking about the behavior change that I've seen among businesses in this work, like distributors, farming operations, food service management companies, and how they're making new corporate policies and addressing this growing demand. And how we have seen these businesses that once really didn't even want to talk to each other, how they're sitting down together at round tables, sharing internal policy documents, and trying really hard to figure out how to address the exploding trend. But then, as I said, I realized I was the last panelist. After 2 days of you guys sitting, listening to panels and keynotes that have all been excellent, but we also have another round of a keynote plenary coming up. So then I figured I really have to be entertaining. And since I don't do a lot of circus tricks, I thought, let's show some fun movies. So that's a technology thing that we're hoping will work. So in just a minute, I'm going to show you some really interesting clips. but I just want to make sure I give you a good sense of who I am and how my work has changed over the past 10 years. As Bernice mentioned, I am currently the Northeast Regional Lead for the National Farm to School Network, in which I serve 7 states, New York, New Hampshire, Vermont, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Maine. And we work as a collective group in the region trying to look at networking and information sharing, setting up convenings, looking at media, marketing of farm to school, sharing about state level policy, working together around federal advocacy and policy, and working on regional level projects. And in about the past 3 years, the farm to school community of leaders in our region have started to work more with the other farm to cafeteria groups, farm to hospital, farm to college, and we set up the FINE collaboration, which is Farm to Institution New England, that really is trying to work on increasing the purchasing power of the institutions, working with food service management companies, distributors, and food processors. So my job today really looks very different than it did 10 years ago. When I started working with Shelburne Farms, I was working on a project called Vermont Feed, which was a partnership project of Shelburne Farms, the Northeast Organic Farming Association of Vermont, and FoodWorks. And it was in the early stages when I started working on it. And our main goal at that time was working with farmers and trying to get their products sold to the schools, and then working with the schools to try to get those products into their menu, and then working with the teachers to try to teach about those projects. The farm to school term was not coined then. We weren't using that term. We were saying food, farm, nutrition initiative. And we worked all around the state with food service directors, school administrators, teachers, parents, interested community members, anybody that wanted to talk about this. And when we looked outside of our state to try to find peers in this work, 10 years ago, we only really found a handful of peers. There was a couple people in California, there was a person in North Carolina, there was a couple people talking about it in Massachusetts. We also found very little written material, almost no images, and really no footage at all. But we were seeing some pretty powerful examples at the time of how the schools and the fields were working together to really serve our youth. So we decided to make a short movie. And we wanted to use this movie as an awareness-building strategy to both just spread the word as to what this work is. And at that time, we started to use the term farm to school. This is now maybe 9 years ago. And we also wanted to use it as we started to build towards state legislation. So this is just a quick minute-and-a-half excerpt from the movie we did 10 years ago. But then after this, I'm really excited to actually share with you some really interesting films that demonstrate the progress we've made in this work. The films that have actually just come out sort of this spring. So, you guys ready? Here we go. Thank you for being patient with me.
As long as we've been farming. But recently with the feed program is when we really started also making the food connection and getting food into the school cafeteria. And that's been just a wonderful thing to know that, kids are starting to eat some of our food, the food that we're growing. When they get to come out to the farm like today, and they get to see the food and they get to actually participate in some of the harvesting, it just actually makes that food, more meaningful to them. I love sending food to the school.
I couldn't say that institutional buying itself would save the family farms, but local buying will save the family farms. And this change in culture that will happen through the schools will promote local buying in general, and in turn save the family farm. What will it be to not be a fad? I think it's sort of one following the other. It's coming in through the schools that will make it not a fad.
And the amount of money that a single farm can bring into the state in a year is completely worth the small amounts of money that we're putting into this program.
The kids are the future for farmers as well as everyone else. We need to show them and their peers that this is a realistic way of life, having the food in their cafeteria that they know their neighbor grew.
All right, so like I said, this is only a minute and a half that's actually excerpt as. It was a 20-minute long movie. But why I chose this excerpt and why I wanted to share it with you is that it really showed the farmers' voices and sort of speaking to what they thought would make the cultural shifts to more institutionalize these ideas. And Hank Bissell of Lewis Creek Farm, he was the second farmer that was talking, talked about it coming through the schools being the way to not make it a fad. And by institutionalizing that consumer concept of improved nutrition and local food. So again, this was 9 years ago. And as I was thinking about today, it led me to think, what are we seeing in the films today? And so the first thing I did was I wrote a very short 2-sentence email to my peers at the National Farm to School Network, all the core partners. So with one email, I hit 51 state leads, 8 regional organizers, 6 national staff, 16 advisory board members. If I had tried to do that 10 years ago, I might have had 5 people to send an email to, and I might have heard back from one person that said, yeah, there's not much out there. So within 2 hours, I had 12 emails back that had links to 25 different interesting, valuable movies that I wish I had enough time to share with you. It was just really exciting. Some of the things were from 12 seconds of powerful raw footage of kids eating kale that they had just bought at the farmer's market, to 6 minutes of really interesting student-driven short films, to hour-long HBO productions. And again, some really powerful images. So we've come a long way in 10 years. But I can only choose a handful. So the first one that I want to show you that just came out is from the W.B. Saul High School in Philadelphia. Yep. Can you guys see that okay? I don't have a mouse.
Having a hard time figuring out what to eat.
Yes. Who are you?
I'm your healthy conscience.
My healthy conscience, why are you here?
I'm here to help you make the best nutrition decisions.
It's M-Y-P-L-A-T-E. My place healthy for me. My place healthy for me. It's M-Y-P-L-A-T-E. My place healthy for me. My place healthy for me.
Who am I? The healthiest person you'll ever meet. Cause I choose my plate every time I eat. Y'all like my plate? Let me tell you what I mean. Fruits, veggies, dairy, grains, purple proteins. Yeah, you know my flow mean your body will be too. If you don't get the right amount of legumes. Saw gang the goons, we healthy ones at that. Next lean bout to spit. Where you at? Where you at?
My plate. Yeah, I'm eating great. Now I'm eating healthy. Now I'm eating grapes. 7 full grains. Trying to make a change. Muscles getting bigger. Protein is the blame. I don't play no games when it come to my plate. Cause I'm the boss of all the healthy choices I make.
All right. That's why I have to show these. These are just really great videos. So what stands out the most for me in this video, besides the catchy song, which honestly I have been singing for about a week and a half now, is how the students really focused on personal nutrition and self-empowerment. But I was also trying to figure out, okay, so we're starting to see students looking at their nutrition, trying to understand more about the foods they eat. But are we also seeing within the youth voice, are we seeing the agricultural connections? Are we seeing the greater good, the buy local, the keep your dollar aspects of this work? And that led me to a really wonderful video that came out of Maui. And I keep needing assistance because I don't know how to get here to the next one. I'm trying to move the slides. It's not.
Oh, it's frozen.
Oh, stop. Okay. Oh, good. All right. This won't take long now. This was really fun. Okay.
Hawaii is one of the most isolated places in the world.
You guys hear it okay?
Over 85% of our food is brought on barges from over 3,000 miles away. Even though we can grow food here all year, we are completely dependent on these food shipments to survive. Among this vast supply is a small population of food that is actually from here.
Hi! Are you okay? You look really tired.
I am. I went on quite a journey to get here.
Really? Why don't you tell me about it?
Well, it all started off in Florida.
One day, I was just chilling in the tree, you know, like us unripe oranges do. And some guy came to pick me. I tried to tell him I wasn't right, but he just wouldn't listen. Then he wrapped me in lots of packaging. And then he loaded me onto a dolly. And dumped me in a container full of lots of other unripe oranges. And then they sent me off on my journey across the country. When I finally arrived on Maui, I was still unripe. So they had to use ethylene gas to ripen me. So I'd look nice and orange when I finally arrived at the store.
Wow, that sounds like such a long trip. Hey, what's that on your shoulder?
Oh, it's just an invasive species I brought in.
Wow.
And it goes on, and all these videos go on, and they get often more entertaining. So both of these videos, both the Saul High School as well as the Maui Hulaya Environmental Filmmaking Club, were made by high school students. And you have to think that most of these students probably have had a max of maybe, 2, 3, 4, 5 years of food and farm related education. And so the next one I wanted to show you, but I'm getting my flag of timing, was a very short clip from a Food Corps commercial that actually did a great job of interviewing young people, early elementary, as well as Food Corps members, about what they wanted to be when they grow up. And the young children were saying firefighters, superhero, doctor. And then the Food Corps members were talking about their future career in food work. And that actually was an important distinction that I wanted to sort of bridge between what we see as some of the success that we're seeing, but also where we have work to do. And so the Food Corps commercial talked a lot about workforce development. And it showed a lot about the emerging workforce that we're seeing of professionals that are interested and ready to take on the food system work. They're sort of coming of age. They're graduating high school. They're graduating college. And they have had enough education, enough exposure that they're excited about this work. But the one other point that I wanted to say was that that there's a piece here about not just following a career path in this work, but also bringing these concepts and these values to those other career paths that the students who want to be the doctor or the firefighter or end up being a plumber actually will end up having that value system. That these are young people that no matter what work they end up in, that their experiences in this education will be part of their value system. And so this is what I really feel like we need to continue to grow. The embedding of this work in existing efforts. Today, this event is actually a great example of sort of multidisciplinary, cross-sector approach. But who is not here? Who do we need to embrace as an actor in this story? We need to continue to build the awareness of our food system and recruit a new generation of food system workers, but we also need to have a clear message that you can transfer those values and understandings no matter what you do and how you live your life. They have to be at the core of how you define yourself and your community, not just your career or your meal choice. So that's where I feel like is sort of the next hurdle in this work. So obviously I've had some technology difficulties, and I'm the last panelist, and I had 15 minutes, and I have so many more notes of other things I feel like we need to work on, whether it be the increase of technical assistance to farmers and food supply chain workers who want to sell to the wholesale institutional markets, or the work that's needing around the emerging need for regulation, not just incentive-based programs. Or maybe I should have talked more about how we can learn from other national campaigns. Nick earlier talked a bit about what we can learn from seatbelts and other national efforts, whether it's recycling or bike helmets or smoking cessation programs. Or maybe where we really need to focus some energy is on the ongoing need to change federal policies that are the barriers to doing our work, whether it be prohibitive labor laws for farmers or that want to lightly process or aggregate product, or the difficulty to incorporate local food into government commodity streams. But as I said, I'm out of time. So in closing, I really want to bring you back to the videos of the young people who are the products of the last 10 years of messaging. A generation that is both caring about the food they eat, the neighbors they buy the food from, and the work that they want to do. And though this is only a snippet of the current culture, I will actually sleep a little better tonight knowing that this generation is interested in tackling these hard issues. Thank you.